New developments today in the privacy uproar over reports that the iPhone tracks users' movements. Studies conducted by the Wall Street Journal found similar practices in Google's Android phones. And today we learned 2 customers have filed a lawsuit claiming Apple is secretly recording customers' movements. Their attorney says it could grow into a class action suit representing 1/3 to 1/2 of iPhone's millions of users. My next guest is following this case very closely. Chen is the author of the upcoming book, Always On: How the iPhone Unlocked the Anything, Anytime, Anywhere Future and Locked Us In. The book will be released in June. He's also a technology reporter at Wired who focuses specifically on Apple. Brian, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me here.
And one of the most surprising things in these new reports from the Wall Street Journal is that even when the location function on your iPhone is turned off, it's still tracking your movements and storing that data. Explain to me a little bit more how this works.
So, there are 2 questions to ask with this whole issue. There's a how Apple is doing this and why Apple is tracking information. So I'm going to start with the how. The how is every time that you take out your smartphone, you're using a location-based service, you're collecting information about nearby Wi-Fi towers and also, or Wi-Fi access points and also cell towers. And after you do that, it stores inside the phone, and you collect a whole bunch of information, and every 12 hours, you transmit this data to Apple over an encrypted Wi-Fi network, and it's also anonymized. So Apple admits they do this, and the question why do they do this? And they claim that they're collecting a comprehensive database for location to assist your services. So it makes it faster when you're using GPS, for example.
And Google does it as well, but how Apple does it different than how Google does it?
The way that Apple is doing it a little bit differently is they're storing the information on the phone forever. That's an issue. It doesn't need to be on there forever after it's transmitted to Apple. The second issue is that, like Wall Street Journal pointed out, they're not turning it off. When you disable it, you can't opt out. It's still doing it. I don't know why that's happening. That's something that Apple's going to have to explain pretty soon. I think their silence is hurting them. They're going to probably have to also issue a software update fixing the flaw that I just mentioned about it storing the data on the phone forever.
Exactly. Still no formal comment on this from Apple or Steve Jobs.
It's been a few days, and I think the longer they wait this out, the more the media is going to pile on them.
So is Apple actually using this data, and if so, how?
They claim that they're using it to build a comprehensive location database to make your location services faster and also to give you more precise location of where you are.
So it's not shared, as far as we know?
They claim it's being made anonymous. So if they make it anonymous, they can't share it with third-party advertisers because it's not very useful information.
So is there some kind of ulterior motive here, or is this just an accident?
I think it sounds like an oversight. It sounds like a mistake.
Does Apple really make oversights?
Yeah, they do. They're kind of clumsy with security issues. We've seen a whole bunch of problems when it comes to security on the iPhone. They've like the passcode screen, you could bypass it with a cheat code, like basically press some buttons and bypass the passcode screen like a year ago or so. So things like that. I think Apple definitely needs to step it up a notch.
Now we're seeing a potential class action lawsuit. How serious could this get in terms of long-term consequences for Apple?
The class action lawsuit I don't think would have happened if Apple had been upfront about this from the beginning. It's worth noting Google does the same thing, and they're upfront from the start. On the screen, on the smartphone, it says, this is what's happening. We're collecting anonymous data. With Apple's iPhone, it didn't say that. So I think Apple's going to probably have to be more transparent in terms of disclosing these issues in the future. And I think ultimately, though, they're probably going to fix it as soon as possible, maybe even apologize with a statement.
An apology from Apple? Yeah. That would be quite unprecedented.
And this is wishful thinking, yeah.
So tell me a little bit more about your new book coming out.
So my book coming out June 7th is called Always On, and it's basically a big picture book about the smartphone revolution, how it's changing our world, our society, how it's impacting privacy is one of the topics I cover, how it's changing policing, how it's changing medicine, education. I also get into psychology. Is this stuff making us dumber or smarter? And ultimately, I think it's a pretty optimistic book. I argue that we're living in a pretty special time where computer science can really disrupt entire industries.
How cooperative has Apple been with you in the book? I know historically they're not very.
Not very cooperative, but yeah, Apple just in general is not that cooperative with the media. Yeah.
So what's going to surprise us most?
I think the privacy implications are actually going to be pretty surprising in the book.
I mean, what could this data be used for, the data that they're collecting?
With the smartphone story we're talking about today, I mean, there's no evidence that they're doing anything malicious with it, but we have to take a giant leap of faith when it comes to trusting for-profit companies that make billions of dollars. So, of course, some people fear that they're sharing it with third-party advertisers, and this stuff is not really anonymous. But again, there's no evidence that's happening.
All right, Brian Chen will be looking for your upcoming book, Always On: How the iPhone Unlocked the Anything, Anytime, Anywhere Future and Locked Us In. Thanks so much for joining us.